inviting me to speak. And so we're gonna, as the title says, Public Relations 101, we're just gonna run through the basics of PR. So let's see if I can figure out how to work this PowerPoint. So just a bit of an agenda for today. I'll tell you a little bit about Theory Marketing Partners. Andy and I will tell you a bit about Theory Marketing Partners, and then we'll launch into the topic, what's PR and why is it important? We'll go over some PR tools, terms, strategies, and best practices, some insights on how to use social media to support PR, running through the gamut of execution options based on kind of least expensive to most expensive as far as executing PR. And then we'll dive into a quick case study with a food company that we worked with. We're Theory. We make your brand marketing compelling, effective, and focused. We work with small teams and companies that are at a growth stage to make foundational marketing decisions together as a team. Many of us are founders ourselves, and so we really understand the importance of being collaborative and nimble. And I'll let Andy introduce himself.
Hey everybody, I've got a few familiar faces on here also, so it's good to see you again. I'm the founder of Theory Marketing, and as Lily was mentioning earlier, the feeling is very mutual. We love working with food labs and being immersed and walking the halls, and food is a passion of mine, and love love this category because not only do you get to think about it, but you also get to enjoy it along the way as you're going to, which is a rare thing. We've worked across maybe 30, 40 different categories, but always find ourselves coming back to food. So very, very honored to be here. My background is in branding and communications. I've been at some ad agencies in the past, and I'm thrilled to bring my colleague Lizzie along today to talk about PR. It's something that I often recommend, and when push comes to shove, I say, well, you got to talk to Lizzie. She's the best. So we're really lucky to have her and really lucky to learn from her today.
Thank you, Andy. I'm blushing. So yeah, as this slide indicates, I'm Elizabeth Cooke. I'm the Director of Communication Strategy here at Theory. Just a little bit more about myself. I did my undergraduate degree at Emory University and my graduate degree at NYU Stern. That's actually where Andy and I met in the MBA program at Stern. And I've worked with a range of nonprofits and startups and my own startups, handling public relations and communications for them. Some food brands that I've had the pleasure of working with through Theory are ToMarket and Seed and Mill. And my own companies, High Artist and Narrative Tango Tours. I had the pleasure of managing PR for L2 Inc., which is a digital benchmarking firm that I helped to position for acquisition. They were acquired by Gartner in 2017, and then some local nonprofits as well. So to dive into today's topic, what is PR and why is it important? The PRSA defines public relations as a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their public. So what does that mean? Essentially, public relations and communications help to cultivate a positive reputation and shape the public dialogue surrounding your company. And PR, in today's market, it's one of the many tools in your marketing and communications mix that can be used to serve a number of purposes, from managing a crisis to expanding brand awareness and driving sales. So based on what you're trying to achieve as far as a business goal, you can use a different PR strategy to try and achieve each of those things. So today we're going to go over some PR tools and terms. Some of the tools that we're going to go over are press release, which is an official document that a company will send out to disseminate news that they want to share. A media alert, which is a shorter version of a press release that generally, a press release can tend to be formatted like an article, And a media alert is just more basic information that will be shorter and tends to be sent out with less of a lead time. Pitching, which is when you're building relationships and actually pitching stories with members of the press. A few terms that we'll talk about are a wire, which is one of the ways that you can share a press release. It's something that you pay for. Lead time, which is varies based on if you are, pitching a print magazine, which has a longer lead time because they still, actually print the thing versus a blog or online publication where the news cycle is much faster. A pull quote, which is something that you'll have in the press release that provides the journalist with an opportunity to feature a quote from a key person in the organization without doing an actual interview with them. And then a beat, which is a topic. All journalists have beats, which are the specific topic that they cover. So some of the common PR strategies and the subsequent slides, we'll go over each of these in a bit more detail. But today we'll be talking about press release creation and distribution, pitching the media, news jacking, thought leadership, relationship building, and press pages. So I hope that by the end of today's session, everyone will be able to walk away with a little bit better of an understanding of each of these PR strategies and how they can be used to achieve your business goals for all of your startups. So as I said before, a press release is an official document used to disseminate news that a company or organization wants to share. It can or cannot be distributed across the wire. The industry standard for wires is PR Newswire. Publishing a press release across the wire is a pretty costly endeavor. It definitely is an investment that comes with a price, but the benefit of that is that there's a specific already put together media list that it will be sent along to. Generally speaking, the price of the publication of the press release across the wire will vary based on your geographical focus. Like if you're just focusing on the tri-state area, it will be less expensive than if you want to do something national or international. And even if you're not publishing something across the wire, it's a great asset to have because it's a concise, clean, official document that you can send out as an attachment when you're reaching out to the media, or you can put it on your website in a press section, and that will provide information for members of the public and members of the press for everything from, if you are hiring a new key person to if you're launching a product, like a new product line. So press releases are a more traditional tool that are still used today. This is the common press release format that many press releases will follow. It's probably a little hard to see, but on the right, this is an image of a press release that I wrote for L2 while I was working there. This was when we were launching a new research report in a new vertical. So we decided to publish this press release across the wire because it was our first research report in financial services that we were doing. So if you send it across the wire, you won't have the contact information at the top. The wire format service will ask for you and publish it in a different space. But generally speaking, you're going to want to have your contact information right in the top of the header. You want to have an eye-catching and descriptive title. Your first paragraph is going to start with the geographical place, so the location and the date. And then that first sentence is really like prime real estate. You want to lead with the most important thing. The first sentence and the first paragraph are hierarchically the most important areas where you want to put the most important information up front. The second paragraph will usually be a pull quote from a key person that is, you know, a term that I introduced previously that is a quote from either your founder or the specific person who is, it's a subject matter expertise person. Like, let's say the press release is about your shoe line, and so your quote is going to be from the designer. And then after that, the most important info you want to include in the subsequent paragraph. So that can either be in bulleted form or in paragraph form. At the end, you want to have a call to action. In this case, our call to action was to download a media-only copy of the research report. Other calls to action could be download our new app. If you have a call to action, you want to make that clear. And then at the end, you want to have an about the person or about the company to provide more information about the company that's disseminating the press release. So if I had to choose one slide in today's presentation that was like absolutely the most important, this would be it. So you have your press release and you're ready to go out and try to garner some coverage for your company. I oftentimes with clients will really over-index on this pitch part. And the reason that is because genuine, authentic stories and relationships are really the bread and butter of public relations. And so there's a lot that you can get right with a pitch, and there's also a lot that you can get wrong with a pitch. And you only have one chance at a first impression, and journalists are really busy. So I really always try to take as much time as possible to make sure that I'm pitching the right person at a publication, to make sure that the story that I'm pitching them on is something that I could actually see them writing, and to make their life as easy as possible, because the easier that you can make their job, the easier that you can make it for them to publish this article, the higher your chances are of getting what you want, of getting this article published. So when you're pitching the media, you're essentially trying to convince them to write about the story that you have to tell. And that's why it's really important to think about the arc of the story when you're reaching out to them, to kind of already have an article envisioned that you want to see in a publication. One important distinction to make is journalists versus editors. Hierarchically in a publication, journalists are like staff writers, for example, that are going to be just writing the pieces, and editors are more of the ringmasters. Many times editors will publish their own bylines, they will publish their own pieces, but in addition to writing, they're also responsible for assigning stories and editing stories that come across their desk before they get published. And the reason why this is important is because if you're pitching a journalist, they in turn have to pitch their editor. So you want to first make the journalist your ally so that they're incentivized to go and bring this story idea to their editor. If you're reaching out to an editor and let's say they don't write, you found the editor, but they don't publish. You found the editor for the publication that you envision a story in, but they don't actually write the pieces. You can look at a few of the staff writers to see, this is who I think could be a good fit to write this piece. And you can indicate that in your outreach to the editor. Say, hey, I have this story idea. I thought that this could be a great fit for this writer, and this writer. You can always link to past articles that are within the same like realm of focus as what you're pitching. And that can be a good indicator of like, hey, I've done my homework. And then with freelance writers versus staff writers, freelance writers work for a number of publications, and staff writers generally are just on staff at one publication. So if you're pitching a freelance writer, again, this goes back to making their life as easy as possible. You want to indicate what the publication is that they contribute to, that you envision your story in. to make it super easy for them to reach out to the editor at that publication and publish this piece that you want them to publish. So make their job easy. Craft the story arc you want to share, have a clear call to action, whether that be we're launching a new product, here's the product gallery, whether that be wanting to set up a media interview with the founder, downloading an app, etc. And then you can attach or link to the press release in the article or in the body of the email, whether that be like through a Google Doc or as an attachment. So you incentivize a journalist by making your pitch timely, relevant to their beat, and concise. The industry standard, and this was backed up by recent reports that Cision and Muckrack most recently published. The ideal average pitch length is about 200 to 300 words. Really do your homework, read the past articles before you're reaching out, and no mass pitching. I know it can be really tempting to send the same pitch to a lot of writers, but I'm a firm believer, and we at Theory are firm believers in quality over quantity. And journalists are pretty good at sniffing out what is a mass pitch and what isn't. So resist the temptation to mass pitch and really try and build those relationships more qualitatively versus quantitatively. So another tactic you can use is newsjacking. This has been a relatively new, like I would say over the past 7 to 10 years, PR tactic, which is enabled by the 24-hour news cycle. So this is when you're capitalizing on current events and breaking news to inject your company's name into the conversation. And you can reach out to the media and indicate that you're a subject matter expert and why kind of your company or an initiative that you're doing is related to this current news topic, and kind of ride the wave of that, the current news cycle. Thought leadership is a really great tool for elevating a brand's presence and positioning executives as experts in their field. And this is a good option, especially, in any life cycle of a brand, you're going to have peaks and valleys. There are going to be times when you have a lot of like really newsworthy stuff happening. And then there are going to be other times when you have less newsworthy things happening. So this is a great tool to use kind of consistently throughout, regardless of what you have going on, to try and continue to get your name in the media and build the presence of your staff members and executive leadership as experts in their field. So this is when you write an article, or either the founder or someone on the team who's a really great writer, or you can hire a ghostwriter, and you'll attempt to get the piece published in a publication that frequently accepts outside contributors. You'd be really surprised when you're kind of like reading things. Just click on the bylines of the people that wrote the articles, and generally speaking, it'll bring you to a bio. I'm always like surprised by the fact that a lot of publications these days are publishing pieces from writers that are contributors who are founders of their own companies. Like Inc.com and Entrepreneur.com publishes a lot of pieces from contributor founders. And a lot of this information as to like how to get something published, so guidelines for contributions, are going to be on their websites. So if you just Google something like contribute to contributor guidelines for Inc.com, or how to publish an op-ed in XYZ publication, you'll probably get some information that comes up with guidelines, clear guidelines as to how to do that. And if after shopping it around, it doesn't get published, then you always have the option of publishing it on a kind of low barrier to entry site like Medium or LinkedIn. So I said previously that the bread and butter of public relations is really genuine storytelling and relationship building. And that's 100% true. So you can, like, relationships take time to build, and you can, even if you're not actively pitching pieces, you can still be working towards building relationships with journalists. One super low hanging fruit area in terms of building relationships with journalists is if your company has received any passive press, which is like press that you didn't pitch yourself. It's always a great idea to reach out to that journalist, say thank you, thanks for featuring us, introduce yourself to them, and make yourself available as a resource if they write on the topic again. And chances are, since many journalists cover the same beat frequently and they'll write pieces within the same topic, chances are they are going to cover it again. And so that's a way for you to stay top of mind for them when they're writing, future pieces. If a writer has written something that really spoke to you and that you really enjoyed reading, reach out to them and compliment them on the piece, introduce yourself. And this is less of a salesy email. You're not trying to sell them anything or necessarily pitch your company. You're just complimenting them. And then you can also build relationships with writers on Twitter. We'll go into a little bit more of this in more detail when in the section on social media. But Twitter is like one of the most used social platforms for journalists. They're incredibly active on Twitter. So you can follow them, you can like their posts, you can retweet stuff, and you can engage with them on Twitter in a way that like isn't stalkerish, in a non-creepy way. So next up we have press pages. Press pages are a great way to showcase earned media on your website through either a dedicated tab or page on your site, or through like a visually forward image banner, generally in a footer. And if you provide contact information for someone, either a general press at your domain name, email, or an agency if you're working with an agency, or an in-house representative, whoever you've assigned to manage press. And it doesn't even, let's say you're a small team and you don't have anyone that is managing press, you can just create an email address, press at, and then that will give the impression that you're a larger team than you are and that you do have someone who is dedicated to press, even if it's just you who's responding to it. But that's a great way to signal to members of the press that you're open to speaking to them and that you're available as a resource. You can also have a contact or request form up. That was one of the first things that I put into action when I joined the team at L2. And if you have multiple pieces of past press, you can create a digital press kit that people can download directly from your website. And using social to support PR. So social media is a great way for you to amplify the earned media that you've used, or the earned media that you've gotten. And then also you can use it as a tool for discovery and learning more about journalists. So whenever you're getting an earned piece of media, you want to republish that across the social media channels that your brand is active on, and naturally tailoring that for the specific platform. So if it's Instagram, you want to make it a little bit more visually forward. If it's Twitter, you can include a pull quote from the article to kind of highlight a specific piece of the article that you like the most. And as I said before, journalists are really active on Twitter. So use this as a resource to learn more about them, nuances in their tone of voice and writing style, learn more about their beat. And you'd be surprised also the amount of journalists, especially staff writers at specific publications, that have their contact info like right there in their bio. You can generally, with a good amount of digging, find the contact information of these journalists and have an actual email address to be able to reach out to them. Another thing too is personal websites. Many writers will have their own personal websites, and sometimes they'll have a contact form on that. So that's also a great tool that you can use to get in touch with them. And one of the cool things about Twitter is the more active you are on Twitter, the more it will kind of serve you up other similar journalists like the person that you're looking at. So a lot of the journalists follow each other on Twitter. And so it's also a great discovery tool to introduce yourself to more writers who are writing on the specific beat. And these aren't social media, but great resources that are free are Muckrack, which is a journalist directory, and Haro, which is called Help a Reporter Out. That's a kind of an email digest that you can sign up for that, generally speaking, features lower tier publications. You know, in the media, we have top tier publications, which are going to be your New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, et cetera. And then lower tier publications, which are generally more like smaller blogs and industry publications. So Haro doesn't always, sometimes they have larger publications, more top tier publications that are sending queries out, but mostly it's the smaller publications. But it can be a great, you know, something to scan over, get the sign up for the email digest, scan over it, and it can be a great tool to start out to respond to queries that are on there. So some execution options. This runs the gamut from starting with least expensive to moving into most expensive based on where you are as a company. The DIY option is either a founder or someone else on your team does it yourself. You can hire an independent contractor or an alternative agency like me or like Theory. You can have someone in-house who is dedicated to PR and communications, or kind of the most full-fledged option would be hiring a PR agency, for example, Edelman or Havas, or one of the smaller agencies that works with startups and work with them on a more retainer basis. That is going to start around $6,500 to $7,000 a month. And generally speaking, they work on a 3-month minimum for an engagement. So before we dive into the case study, Andy's going to share a little bit more about Theory's unique approach to PR, and then we'll look at the case study and use the rest of the time for questions.
Thanks for handing it over, Lizzie. Yeah, just wanted to quickly touch base on how we do it. And we're firm believers in the company owning the relationship. So the big difference between the way that Havas will do it or that Edelman will do it, which is they'll open their Rolodex and you're basically renting their Rolodex for however many months you retain them. The way that we like to do it is much more from a grassroots perspective. So making sure that you're building those relationships and that you own those relationships in-house. So as you continue to build, it can be people that you can continuously call on and do that. And that's kind of the benefit of going with that, is that as you build your business, this is an equity you can retain, and this is value that you can continue to build. It's not something you're paying to rent like you would at an agency. So we're believers in the former of the grassroots technique and building relationships. It takes a little bit more time, yeah, but we think it's worth it. And building in the long run and having good relationships with the press can be really, really beneficial. I've seen lots of startups get their first big wave of orders from a press piece. And it's often where we start and say, if you want to go out and do a big splash, getting a press piece can be a really, really great way to start off. So it's something that we highly recommend, and we recommend building in-house as well. So that's just our spiel on how we do things. Lizzie's going to now present you a case study on how we did this for another client. They're regional, so we focused on regional press, but I won't spoil anything else. I'll turn it back over to Lizzie.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so this is a client that we're currently working with, and a campaign that we launched a few months ago. and just to look at how you can support new business with public relations. The client is ToMarket. They're an online platform for chefs and purveyors that connect ordering, marketing, and invoicing all in one place. And when the coronavirus hit and restaurants closed, they realized that their network of suppliers, and which are farmers and food purveyors, could really help fill a new consumer need for getting farm fresh products. So they really quickly added B2C functionality on their platform, on their web platform, so that consumers could order directly from these suppliers. And then that way they also had a new sales channel for their network of suppliers. And this was also a strategic move to insert the brand into the conversation, into the media, and really begin building overall brand awareness and goodwill. One of the things that they did was offer a 20% discount for furloughed industry professionals. And so that was a way to spread their message of, we're here for the community, and we support everything that is, we support industry workers in a time that is impacting the food industry in unprecedented ways. So we worked with them on a PR campaign to help spread the word about this added functionality in one of their specific markets, which is Austin, Texas. So the approach we took was to build a press release, build a press list, and then go ahead and pitch. This, again, follows the format that I introduced for press releases earlier in the presentation. And writing the press release and going through that process really helped us to nail down what our specific message was and kind of what the arc of the story was that we wanted to lead with. And then I put together a press list that was tailored to Austin area food publications and business publications, TV producers, et cetera. And that garnered a few pieces of earned media, the best of which we'll look at today. I had reached out to Eater Austin, the editor Nadia, and then also Addie Broyles, who's the food writer for the Austin American Statesman, and she published something in Austin 360. One thing that's worth mentioning with the Eater piece is that Nadia, the editor, never actually responded to me, but she ended up publishing something. So that, is just proof that writers and editors are busy people. And sometimes you'll get a piece of press and you'll never get a response. So that's important to note, because it's one hygienic best practice is to set up a Google alert for your company, so that if something comes through on the internet that you might miss, that you can capture that. And then also to get in the habit of periodically searching your name, so that if there are press hits that you're getting that you might not know about, those aren't slipping through the cracks. And just some final thoughts. I know it's 11:40 and we promised to leave some time for questions. PR can be used as a great tool to help build brand awareness and drive sales. It's a great idea to just start reading and become familiar with the writers covering your industry and build relationships with them over time. When reaching out to the media, always do your homework first. I know I said this before, but you only have one first impression. And once a journalist decides to not take you seriously, it's hard to win back that trust. The same way it's hard to win back the trust of customers once you've lost it. And there are many execution options that vary in resource commitment of both time and money. So choose the one that's best for you at your company's given stage. Again, I'm from Theory. Andy's our fearless leader. We handle PR and communication strategy, brand positioning, go-to-market strategy, pricing, and more. If you want to continue the conversation, PR is one of my favorite topics on earth. So I would love to continue the conversation about it. I'll drop, after I end, I'll drop the Calendly link into the chat. And if you missed it, or if you missed my grabbing my contact info, please feel free to reach out to Lily, and she can send it to you. You can email me or sign up via my Calendly link for a 30-minute consultation. And thank you. So I think we'll open it up for questions now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lizzie and Andy. And I can share out the Calendly link on our Slack channels afterwards as well, in case anyone misses that. And we'll also, now that we have this as a recorded session, this should be an incredible resource for a bunch of members going forward. It looks like we have a question from Yawa. Yawa, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, I actually asked this earlier when you were talking about the pitch, but you kind of addressed it. I guess like when pitching best practices, like let's say you have like a reporter's email, but you didn't necessarily get it directly from them. Like, do you have any like etiquette for how to contact people, and like whether like are there specific channels that are better? Because I feel like, you know, a lot of times writers get so flooded with their inboxes that it's just like so hard to keep track. And I feel like, I don't know, sometimes like maybe other channels, or you did talk a little bit about like following journalists on social media, and they're very active on Twitter. I just don't know if you can maybe expand a little bit better on if you think like one channel is better than others for specific types of pitches, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I always like to, if email is available, I think that's the best way to reach out to them. A lot of journalists will have their direct messages on Twitter disabled. So you can't come across, you can't reach out to them directly on Twitter. And then also another kind of hack is trying to reverse engineer the email address of the writer. Like a lot of the staff writers at publications will have the same format. Sometimes it'll be the first letter of their first name and then their last name. But I think a good way to, like in the body of your email, you can introduce yourself and link to an article. What I'll often do is say, my name is Elizabeth Cooke. I manage PR for XYZ client, and I really enjoyed reading or I won't even lead with that. Sometimes I'll lead with, my name is Elizabeth, and I really enjoyed reading this recent article of yours, and linking to that, and then pulling something specific out of that story that spoke to me, and then tying that to what I'm reaching out to them for. So tying that to the client, or tying that to what's going on in the client's ecosystem at the moment. There was something else I thought of and now I forgot. And you're right. Like a lot of journalists get flooded with information. And so the way I like to think of it too is the hierarchy of, you're always trying to get them, it's one step at a time, and you're always trying to get them to the next step. So you want to write a subject line that incentivizes them to open it. You want to write an opening like sentence that incentivizes them to keep reading. And then you want to have the body of the email be really neatly put together such that they're incentivized to open up the attachment, or click the link that you want them to click. So just doing your homework, making it crisp. I will often draft something, let it sit for a while, and then go back to it, edit, like make it, see if I can make it, if there's any stuff that I can cut out before sending it. And it's a more time-consuming process, but I think it renders better results. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thanks.
Great.
Lizzie, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I'm a busy founder, and I've got so many channels out there that I can do. You know, there's Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, email. Why should I focus on PR? What are the benefits of choosing this channel over any other channel that I should spend my time on?
Yeah. So PR is a great tool that's a great question, Andy. And PR is a really great tool to build credibility. Like if I am a customer and I'm considering I'm considering a new pair of shoes. And I have my list of things that are important to me as a consumer. It could be price, it could be environmental sustainability. And I'm looking at a few different companies. One of the things that I'm going to do is check what other people have to say. So it's a lot more impactful for if you're being told to buy something by people you trust, by publications you trust, by thought leaders you trust. That's going to incentivize me as a customer much more to buy the thing versus going. Of course, the founder is going to tell me that I should buy their product, you know. But if I have signals from again publications that I trust and thought leaders that I trust that are telling me this is worth paying attention to because of X, Y, and Z reason, that's going to be more compelling to me than paying attention to the person because the founder is telling me to do it. And also, as a consumer, I'm probably not going to go to the founder's personal channels first to get information. I'm going to do a Google search. And backlinking is also another important thing. The more press hits you get, the better it is for your SEO strategy. And the higher it'll move that rank. And it'll just, it'll kind of be a good tool in terms of general hygiene for your brand. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, good morning. I have a question. My name's Randy. I'm in Southern California. And earlier you spoke about the client that was in the food industry and how you how your company helped that client. Can you elaborate more about that client and who they are? And can you share about any other clients or projects you're working on specifically with food or hospitality for restaurants? We're in the restaurant space.
Yeah. Hi, Randy. Thanks for tuning
Hi.
in today. So that client was ToMarket. It's an online platform that organizes everything from invoicing and marketing and discovery of new purveyors. We actually worked with them on one of our other services in addition to public relations is brand building. So they did a brand workshop with us and we helped key in on their brand messaging and visual identity and kind of the whole gamut of brand assets. And then later on have been helping them with public relations. And they're really committed to, their tagline is find better food. They're really committed to helping simplifying things so that the chefs can work on making the food and the farmers can work on growing the food, so that because no one gets passionate about like invoicing and marketing. Everyone in the food world tends to be passionate about the thing that their area of focus. So they're trying to free up time to allow people to focus on what they're passionate about. So does that answer your question about ToMarket specifically?
Yes, and how long was that time frame, or what was the time period? How long would you say that took about?
For the press project specifically, we started working with them in March, Andy, right? And they also did a few radio ads. So we, wrote the copy for some ads that they ran on NPR in the Austin area. And I think Andy can speak a bit more to the brand workshop piece preceded the PR work.
Yeah, so it's a long process to build up the brand. When we engage with PR, we start with a press release that can take a few weeks to develop and a press list along with that. But typically we'll see some things come through after about a month or two. Depends on the size of the industry, so who's on that beat and how many people are writing about this thing. So it's going to be individual no matter what. But relationship building does take time. So it's not like you pull out your Rolodex and you say, oh, I'll just call my buddy and they'll write about it. This is something that we hope we can go to again and again and again. And so that's, again, sets you up in a better position down the road if you ever need to do that, and you don't need to just rent someone's Rolodex. Yeah. And
to answer the other part of your question, Randy, I apologize. Andy and Randy. Other food clients that we've worked with, I mentioned earlier, Seed and Mill. They're an artisanal food brand that makes tahini and halva-based products. They were a client back in May. We did a brand workshop with them, and you can actually, if you search on YouTube for Theory Marketing Partners, you can find our YouTube channel, and we did a live streamed brand workshop with them, which was our brand workshop process that we broadcast out to everyone in May. And there's also an article that was published in conjunction with that on Media Post. We were featured in the CPG FYI column that Steve Ellwanger writes. And that was an interview and that was a similar process. We published a press release. I wrote a press release relating to this Theory Live initiative that we were doing. I pitched it out to a few people. Steve Ellwanger was interested in the story. We did an interview. I, wrote talking points for Andy and Rachel, who's the co-founder of Seed and Mill, so that interview could go really smoothly. And then Steve Ellwanger published a piece.
Would you suggest working with partners that are in your same region, local area, or does it matter? Where are you guys located again?
I think it matters with what your business outcome is. So specifically, ToMarket was looking at Austin because that was where the service was regionally specific. So we went after regional partners there. But if you're a national brand, if you're distributing nationally, then you should look toward national press. It really depends on your business goal. I think you get an advantage with working with a small team, which is, they're there to make your life easier, to make the journalist's life easier. That's kind of what they're really good at. So I like working with a small team. I'm not sure these days if regionality really matters, especially because everybody's remote. But there are certain regional specific publications that you could target. So yeah.
Great. Thank you both. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Randy.
Hi, Lizzie. This is Nikki from Jin's Kitchen.
Hi, Nikki. How are you?
Hi. Good. Andy, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for this presentation. It was really comprehensive. I wonder if you could touch upon how influencer culture had changed or not the PR practice, and how KOL outreach and engagement plays into PR and marketing during the brand launch.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I focus mostly on the media side of PR, so publications and journalists that are writing kind of longer form pieces that are being written by journalists for publications. But influencers can definitely form part of a PR and marketing strategy. I think we're at an interesting time right now, culturally and societally, when it comes to influencers, just with everything that's going on in the advertising landscape and in kind of social dialogue, especially if an influencer's values don't align perfectly with a brand's values. So that's another kind of, and what I was saying before in terms of, I do tend to think that the credibility that one can earn and the backlinking that one can, there's no expiration date on an Instagram feed. It's a pretty chronological, more urgent, timely thing. And with a publication, that article is going to have a longer expiration date. It's going to live on this publication for sometimes perpetuity, sometimes just a number of years. So I think that there's more possibility to get ROI, get a better ROI. One area that I didn't touch on, but that is a kind of new emergent over the past 5 years, and even more so recently, are podcasts. A lot of influencers will have podcasts. And so that's a great tool that you can use that's more conversational, and is something that will live on in a longer capacity than perhaps an Instagram post will. There was another part of your question. Did I answer all of it?
Yeah, mostly. I was just wondering about how traditionally, well, especially with the changing trend, how KOL engagement and management plays into this, because you can imagine the KOL list can grow quite rapidly, and during pitching, their opinion and how they are made aware of certain products could sometimes be useful as well. Just wondering if you have any advice on how to tread that territory, if there's any, success or trial and tested risks as well, I suppose.
I mean, influencers are generally, it takes the same amount of relationship building and outreach with them too, if you want to get, the big ones. They have some disadvantages though. As Lizzie mentioned, one is it doesn't necessarily, depending on their platform, it doesn't necessarily help your SEO at all, which is a really nice side effect of getting journalists. But the biggest thing is credibility. So publications, if we have our client ToMarket as featured in Eater, that means that this is a legitimate business that is reputable and someone else is willing to write about it. The same cannot be said for individual influencers. And so that's why we think it's a channel with a lot of side effects and a lot of good benefits that comes with it other than influencers. It's okay to play the influencer game, and it's one way to do it. There are lots of successful companies that have done it. But we're trying to, we're looking for slightly longer term effects with it. It can be very good for short-term sales, but we like to build brands that are putting down a solid foundation of that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, and actually, before you do, I'd want to mention something so I don't forget it. Newsletters. Yeah. Newsletters are also another. There's a bit. It's harder to track the SEO. It's harder to track with SEO and kind of track the link between a mention in a newsletter to actual like website visits or sales. But a lot of, I spoke earlier in response to Andy's question about what are the sources that consumers and that people turn to and trust. Increasingly more today, people are getting their news digest and getting their recommendations from newsletters that come into their inbox on a daily basis, be it from a thought leader or from a publication. So getting featured in those also is another tool that you can use to help build brand awareness and kind of get a brand lift. And you had another question that I hope you still remember.
Yeah. as owners and co-founders and chefs and designers, we actually receive a lot of inbound requests. Do you have any best practice and advice for owners of brands who receive a lot of inbounds and how to manage those informations and leads?
Yeah, if you can identify one person on your team to respond to those, and one of, I mentioned before, like a contact form on a website, that can be a really great way to kind of help filter what it is. When I started at L2, we didn't have a press page on our website, and we didn't have a contact form. And there was a similar situation where they were getting a decent number of press hits on a weekly basis and inbound requests, and they needed someone to respond to those. So we put together a contact form with a drop-down menu that would allow members of the press to indicate what they were reaching out for. Did they want an interview? Did they want access to a specific research report? And that kind of helped us determine which channel to push them down. So that can be a good way to try and filter what's coming in so that you can know who to send it to. So I would say putting up some kind of a structure that helps them to indicate that helps them help you. And then having one point of contact internally are two options that I think will kind of immediate fixes to help organize that inbound request.
Thank you. I'm going to go build that right now.
Great. Any other questions?
It looks like Yawa had one other question. Are you still with us, Yawa?
I was gonna ask if you're like a purely like digitally native brand, are there still benefits to non-digital PR? I don't even know if that's like relevant anymore, because I feel like even like print media, they all have their digital counterparts. But
yeah, that's another good question. I am I still like things that are tangible. And I'm a bit of an old-fashioned person in that regard. And I think that there is also a certain amount of clout if you can get published both in the digital realm, and then also if your piece is also going to run, generally speaking, it's going to be larger feature pieces, cover stories, bigger pieces that are going to both run that are more in depth because they do have that longer lead time, that are going to be both featured in the print version and an online version. Another thing that we didn't touch on, and that is kind of obsolete given that air travel is not happening in our current climate, but like hemispheres and other airline publications, that is an area of print news and like print publications that where the tangible thing does matter, and where I think that you're capturing potential users in a prime space where they don't have much else to do. They're on hostage. Yeah, they're being held hostage. And I think that is an example of an area of written news that doesn't translate as well from the print realm to the digital realm. And there are certain airline publications that are that have really solid reputations. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was pretty good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. This is incredibly helpful and practical. And I'm so excited that we have it available now as a recording, because I think it's going to be a really good thing for brands to turn to over time. Yeah, well, as I mentioned, I'm gonna post the link for Calendly to our Slack channels afterwards, so that any members that missed this can still connect with you guys. Any final words from the theory team?
I would just say thank you so much for having us. We love working with food labs and food brands. I also put the Calendly link in our chat if anybody wants to book time with Lizzie before everybody else jumps on it. We always do. We as part of our duty as serving food labs to give office hours to anybody who asks. So if you're interested in talking, how can this work for my individual circumstance or my specific type of business, definitely book some time with Lizzie. And we hope to hear from you soon.
Yeah, and I just want to echo, thank you, Lily, for having us. We really, and to echo Andy, we really love the Food Labs community. So please, if there's a way that we can continue to help, get in touch.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, have a great day, everyone.